viewers to the last session of day 2. Depending on where you are in the world, of course, different seasons in the Northern and Southern Hemisphere, but our panelists have very kindly created a generous display of spring colors, fall colors, blue skies, and it has been blue skies. Just talking to them about the class of 2022 and the very positive job market that they've been enjoying. So if all of you have just sat through the admission session that my co-host John with these 4 schools, now we get to complete the journey and think about some of the career opportunities and the wonderful outcomes that the MBA graduates of these 4 great schools enjoy. To share that story, I'm joined by Chilin He. Chilin is the Associate Director of Full-Time MBA Career Services at UC Irvine, with that beautiful spring bloom picture behind her. Mary Coughlin, the Associate Director of Career Development at the Mendoza School at Notre Dame. We have Latanya Johns, who is joining us from the Symonds School at Rochester. She's the Assistant Dean of the Career Management Center. And Doug Hanslett, the Director of Graduate Career Services and also the Director of Employer Relations. We'll be talking a lot about those very privileged connections that the schools have with employers from USC and the Darla Moore School. So thank you all 4 of us for joining us. Chilin, that spring blossom perhaps is a reflection of the class of 2022. You were saying, this is proving to be a great year for the opportunities that your graduates are now enjoying. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen through the summer and the sort of feedback that you've been getting from your graduates.
Absolutely. Well, nice meeting everybody and my fellow panelists. I think we are actually wrapping up the debrief with our returning second-year students on how their summer internships have been going. Amazing performance, great performance reviews by their managers. And then now my partner and I have actually finalized a lot of their resumes, and we got the privilege of getting the firsthand information about, any org changes that they lived through, right? The amazing projects that they took on, the ambiguities that they navigated. We're very proud of our second-year class because every single one of them landed an amazing brand name company for the summer internship. And so proud of a lot of the Moraja students being the first intern to enter those brand name companies. So definitely a lot to cheer and a lot to celebrate. And I have to say, as they added these amazing internship experiences on top of their resumes, it gave us such a big confidence booster that they will continue the success in their full-time job search experience. And now they're amazing buddies to the incoming first-year class. So it's just good to hear all the successes that they got to share and the amazing insights that they passed down to the first-year class.
Mary, you gave a great analogy. Netflix and Apple TV, they've now got us used to just the new episode coming out on Friday, whereas with the return of all of those first-year students, now second-year students, having completed their internships, they're all sharing what an incredible summer that they've had. Similar also for the graduating class. What are you seeing in terms of the job offers that were made to the graduates this year?
Yes, so we've seen strength with the class of 2022. So 3 months after graduation, 96% of our students have already accepted offers. We're seeing a lot of strength, especially within the consulting and financial services area, but also growth within technology as well. So I think especially coming out of the pandemic, technology was really able, the tech sector was able to embrace kind of the flexibility within that space. So we've seen strength within technology, but also still within consulting and financial services, extremely strong outcomes with record salaries within the class of 2022.
Douglas, we were saying it's a little bit like having an extended family. There are 100 new members of the family as they begin their MBA. You watch them, go through this sort of career exploration and journey with you and your team, and then off into the world. A bittersweet moment, having enjoyed that time and so much one-on-one mentoring and coaching. What are you seeing in South Carolina?
I'd follow on Mary's comments, frankly. After a 100% placement in 21, 22 came back with a strong 96% as well. This summer's interns, robust as can be. We're already 1 month into this year, and our 23 graduates, I'm already at 65% placed from conversion of last summer, heavily into, I'd say, consulting, financial services, and technology as well. Probably the big three. I think we're going to forecast that technology may be pulling back a little bit in terms of our shift in the numbers, given the environment. But supply chain, where we are very, very strong, is picking up right on that slack. So after, I think 23 pretends to be the third in a row of a very, very strong, robust employment pipeline for us.
Right. So great numbers across the board. I'm sure, Latanya, for you as well. At a personal level, Latanya, you know, watching the students, the offers that they're getting, the great stats that you're all reporting, it must be an incredibly rewarding part of your job.
Very much so, Matt. I've been doing this for over 25 years, different universities. And one of the things that I enjoy the most about the work that myself and my fellow panelists do is to just that moment when the student gets their offer and they come into your office and they share that news. That for me is just the absolute best moment in their journey. And I'm so privileged and just enjoy being a part of that. Just going with them through the ups and downs, the rejections, but then knowing that that day is coming for all of them is what fuels them. But to be there on that day, it's just, there's nothing like it. And I absolutely love celebrating with them. I tell them during orientation, when you have that day, please come and see me because I want to cheer with you. I want to give you a high five, give you a hug, whatever you're comfortable with, but it's the absolute best feeling. And it's also the passion behind the work that we do is, I think, what the students reflect on when they're working with our centers. It's, you know, they're working with a group of people who are passionate about this journey and about their outcomes. And I think that is just an amazing, amazing story, amazing family. I agree with Doug. Definitely feels like an extension of my own personal family.
Right. Well, let's work back from that joyful day. And of course, having just had a session with your colleagues in admissions and, you know, putting together applications, talk about, well, why business school? Where do I see myself post MBA? Presumably, Gillian, there's also in the early stages, you know, they might come to you with some very specific goals, but you're really helping them to explore many opportunities. It's often not just one track. So how does it actually work? What you and your colleagues are doing in those early stages to think about strengths, sense of purpose, you know, what goes into that early stage of reflection?
Absolutely. So during our orientation at Palma Rogers School for Business, we have a program called Career Launch, which is an 11-hour, 3-day career program to really guide students through goal setting and understand their themselves. So we coach students on the importance of conducting self-exploration so that they don't jump into, you know, 1 or 2 goals that they have been thinking about for a few years or for a month. Maybe that's not the right fit for them. So we spend a lot of time navigating, you know, the results of a career leader, and we introduced the Clifton Strength a few years ago. So through this whole program, students have a better understanding of some of the career choices that they brought into the B school, but on the other hand, also brings the perspectives of a fit, the importance of being a fit. So we also do a very fun activity. We call it 100 jobs to really help your students understand the ingredients of these jobs. So for students who come in thinking of consulting, maybe they love the problem solving piece of it. Maybe they love the teamwork, but not the work style. So what are some of the other career opportunities that give them that sense of fulfillment or the satisfaction to allow them to also use their analytical skills to pitch solutions and have the executive presence, but not necessarily have to be management consulting. So I think we have done a lot of these type of exercises to help students brighten their horizon, to identify a better fit, to bring the authentic self into the exploration phase. And it's okay for students to downgrade some of their career goals in their mind, thinking, I thought this is a good one for me, but then it turned out not to be the right fit. So we facilitate that process with a lot of, you know, insights that they gain from their research sessions with us, and also getting alumni to share their journeys, their ups and downs, so that by the time we start the full quarter, it really helps students gain a lot of confidence and know how to narrow down to the goals that make sense for them.
Right. Now, every MBA student, Mary, of course, has their own individual background and story, their personal hopes and dreams. So in those initial discussions, how do you nudge them? Are they already intrinsically quite open-minded? Gillian was describing some of the different tools that you can use. So there might be some tough love in there too, just as you're sort of helping them to explore the many options that they're going to then enjoy.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Mary. Sorry.
No, Mary. Yeah, the question was.
Yeah. Great. Yes. And I really appreciated her comments around using tools like Career Leader, things like that. And I think that it's important, just like all of us have different communication styles, I think we recognize that students have a variety of different learning styles, especially when it comes to functional discernment and industry discernment. And that, I think, in and of itself requires a lot of reflection for students as well. A lot of students come in saying, I love this industry, but you want to make sure that the function that you are doing day to day within that industry is also something you're intrinsically motivated by. So we look at that holistically, whether it be one-on-one coaching. So we start with pre-matriculation one-on-one coaching, where students can take Career Leader before they've ever even set foot on campus. But then we have a robust career leadership course where we meet twice a week with the students and they can work with each other. We have second years come in and do panels on a variety of different functions, but also bring in the really strong alumni network so that even if they don't trust their second years on something, or their career coaches just quite yet, and they want to hear somebody who's kind of in the seat right now, we have events called deep dives where students can hear from people who during the day, 9 to 5, were doing that specific job. And then in the evening are talking about that function to current students. So I think a key element, like you mentioned, of almost the tough love of kind of going into that functional discernment is providing a variety of different tools and opportunities, but knowing that everyone has that different learning style of whether it's speaking to an alum or going to a specific event or working through one-on-one coaching versus a panel. So really providing that breadth of opportunity for what will most speak to people's learning style, especially when they're discerning different functions.
Right, and from what you're both describing, it strikes me that things get started very quickly. I mean, Douglas, to have already placed 2/3 for next year's internships. Is this a process that you start before they actually arrive on campus and for their first classes of the core curriculum?
Is that for me?
Yes.
So absolutely. So we do a little bit before they arrive on campus, but the minute they go into orientation, ours is a very comprehensive and fairly lengthy career leadership program that really focuses on career literacy, career awareness, and career kind of exploration and empowerment, if you will. Ours program is that I'm an instructor for, and I bring in various people, is 6 weeks long, 5 hours per week. That's for the first part of the semester. Then the second semester, which is 3 hours a week, which is primarily panels. The first session of the 6 week does the fundamentals, the resume, the LinkedIn bio, the networking, the cover letters, A to Z, the marketing collateral that you need to present yourself from your elevator pitch to exchanging at a conference or an expo or National Black MBA, whatever the platform is. We teach you every A to Z step of how and what you're presenting, both on paper, online, or physically in person. The second part of the teaching curriculum is panels, where we bring in MBA predominantly recruiters, but also some alumni across 14 panels across virtually every segment. So we'll have 4 to 6 consulting panels in one. Probably have 3 consulting panels, so there ends up being 10 to 12 consulting firms. We'll bring in the technology panel, CPG panel, financial services panel, again broken down by investment banking, capital markets, or other commercial banking, and other Fiservs and other maybe fintech companies. So by the time they're done with it, kind of almost 12 weeks, they're not only been exposed to a lot of companies, but are armed with all the tools and necessary collateral they need to go in front of them. And most all of that culminates before the big conference series begin. So our on-campus expo was 2 weeks ago. Then they go right into National Black MBA last week. This week is an alumni event. Next week is another is Vet MBA. So it really prepares them for the season, if you will. Deep dive.
I can almost feel the waiter in the restaurant over my shoulder as I'm looking through this enormous menu and struggling to choose. You're offering so many different options, and at the same time, I mean, Latanya, MBA graduates, they might remember a great marketing professor or a course that they took about scaling a startup, and of course there were those accounting exams that they'd far sooner forget. But you know what you're offering, this highly personalized, one-on-one support to really dig deep and look at, individuals, their skill sets. I mean, it really is, it's the magic source, I think, of the MBA. How does that sort of one-on-one guidance work at the Symonds School?
Sure. Well, as several of my colleagues mentioned, we also start working with our cohorts prior to orientation. In fact, we start about 2 months prior. We have an onboarding, which is a part of our 4-part pronged approach to career development. So during the onboarding, they are going through a series of modules, and we are tracking them as they, come in. Admissions decisions are being made. We're making sure that each of the students are keeping up with the modules. So in addition to just the overall introduction to the Bennett Career Management Center, we also have a module for self-assessment, career assessment. We're using Career Leader, as Mary had mentioned. We also have a module, and all of these modules are these are self-study modules where a member of our team has recorded sessions and really talking through all of the learnings with the students. There is a module exploring the labor market, and that one obviously has to change year to year. But it's a great opportunity for us to introduce to the students the various resources and tools that they'll have access to once they begin their journey with us. We have a module for their resume, and we use a resume analytics tool so that we can get at least that first review done prior to orientation. And then we also have a module on your online presence. So all of these modules are done before they come to orientation. And then during orientation, that's where our students will begin to refine their career choices. And we'll be aligned to an advisor whose area of expertise matches their interests. We're very fortunate to have advisors, career advisors, who've come to us from the different industries, different functional roles, similar to what our students are pursuing. So in addition to that one-on-one relationship, our students are also assigned to a career action team. And these are small group team meetings that will help guide the students through their internship search process. They involve inputs from our second-year students, as well as alumni who are joining the different CAT team meetings. The alumni do a careers in series, similar again to what some of the others have described. And so we feel that the onboarding and the orientation, after the students have completed both, they have a really good running start. And also, as Doug mentioned, some of the conferences, the career conferences, they start really early. But we also have a group of students in our cohort that have gone to the early access MBA conferences. So several of them have already secured internships by the time they started the program. So I think the key word here is early. Everything just seems to start earlier each and every year. And so at the school level, what can we do to make sure that our students are ready so that when they do get here, they have a great, great running start. They have a great resume. They have a great pitch. They've got a very compelling story that ties in what they did prior to their pursuits in the MBA program, and that they feel really well connected and plugged in to the alumni network. So it's definitely an early start, but by this time of the year, I feel like we know all of the students very intimately, when actually they've only been here for just a little over a month now.
Right. And it's a very intensive, and those tremendous results that you all shared at the beginning of the panel, hats off to you and your teams. I can only begin to imagine just how much work there has been for all of you to achieve those sort of successful results. You mentioned the idea of each year assessing the labor market and sort of changing needs. I mean, Chilin, as you think about skill sets, already from the class of 2019 to the class of 2022, the world was, turned upside down. So what do you see as some of the skills that recruiters are really identifying that reflect the evolving global business landscape?
Absolutely. I think if one thing that COVID did to all of us is expedited digital transformation, right? So I think one of the key skills that a lot of employers look for, and I think that's also reflected in the second-year internships that they did over the summer, is the agile methodology, really be able to look into complex problems and also be able to drive digital transformation. So just reviewing our students' bullets recently, I noticed a lot of their projects are about incorporating technology to automate a business process for their employers. Or of course, as the generations are getting younger, we're also looking into the different segments, if it's a marketing project. But I think there is a strong theme that we have been noticing is how we're prepping students in this generation to fit into this digital theme in the world. And the other part we have noticed, which hasn't changed, is pretty consistent as before pandemic, is about strong communication skills. But on the other hand, in this current, we call it either virtual or in-person or hybrid environment, a lot of students get to do their job either virtually or hybrid. So what can they do to make sure they keep a strong communication skills, get the visibility, really be able to navigate the ambiguities in a virtual setting is also key to their successful performance.
Got it. So with all of these skills that they're developing, Mary, there must also be place for other ways during the 2 years at Mendoza that they're sort of, they're on this leadership path, the things that they're learning. I was always struck by a remarkable story of some of your students that I think were in Colombia, in South America, working with former FARC members and their sort of conversion to civil life. I'm not sure if that's the best way to describe it. Now, employers looking at those sort of ventures and the leadership opportunities that you've given them, is this something that also then resonates with them and what they imagine the characteristics and the value system of those individuals would be?
Absolutely. And I think you're speaking to our Business on the Front Lines program, where I think when you mention things like leadership, and those are the type of skills that aren't going to change that employers are looking for. And that's paramount within our holistic view of students and their development here. So our mantra at Mendoza is to grow the good in business. So when you are learning these skills within strategy, finance, digital transformation, how can you make sure that you are impacting these in an ethical way? So we have programs like Business on the Front Lines, which is a semester-long project where students are able to work and bring change through commerce all around the world. But we also have a program that is right next to our career leadership course within our orientation called Leadership Launch, that really focuses on how students can be great, ethical, and impactful leaders. So I think these are really great complements where we look to all of the variety of resources, not just within our career center to help with career development or academics to help with academics, but really to look holistically across the entire college to make sure that we have those types of immersive experiential learning opportunities. Just next week, I believe we're going to have a variety of students going on trips like that, as well as doing projects across the country in something called Interterm, where students can go on site to companies for 4 or 5 days and share recommendations, kind of acting as short-term consultants. So really thinking about a variety of those opportunities in order to make leaders as holistic people. And I remember one quote from one of the founders of Notre Dame is that we won't educate the mind at the expense of the heart. And I always like to bring that up. So when you mention things like that, I think it's a very holistic approach to make sure that you leave not only with the skills, but you leave as an ethical leader.
Right, and Douglas, as Chilin was describing, the digital world that we're now in, the sort of data analytical skills that go hand in hand with that. How do you and your team also then ensure some of those softer skills of leadership, as Mary was describing, but even, when it comes to networking at all of the conferences that they're attending, or interview skills, how are you then providing the coaching and support for them to really excel in those different areas?
Well, I think that they both very eloquently captured a lot in those comments they made. We do a lot of it in our one-on-ones, right? So in addition to the formal CLP classroom, there is a lot of one-on-one. And I think that we've kind of evolved our interpretation of soft and hard skills to human and functional skills, basically. And the functional part is kind of easy to address. I think, UC Brent said it really well in terms of the digital transformation. We must learn how to make our MBAs encompassing leveraging technology, not just using, but leveraging, and whether it be data analytics, not just crunching the data, but making it visual and communicating that data, making that out there. We just had the CHRO of IBM on campus, and she looked right at my colleagues and I and said, we don't necessarily need your MBAs to have another depth of accounting. I have a whole accounting team. So we'll still have an accounting part of our MBA, but we want them to know digital transformation across the business lines, if you will. On the human side of the skills, we're clearly listening, agility, trying to think abstract, particularly in the consulting world, if you will. There's a lot. There's so many that cut across different academic disciplines. Because within the functional side, we know that data analytics, which is probably our cornerstone of what we get out of the MBA, is going to be used, whether financial analysts, marketing analysts, supply chain analysts, strategy analysts. You're going to use analytical skills. It's how to pull out those human skills and do that in one-on-one sessions, if you will, or introduce them to alumni or panelists in other company presentations that we think can elicit those human skills, those soft human skills that we may see in them. I think a key part of a full-time traditional MBA program, more so than like an online off-the-shelf program, is that soft skills that you're going to develop teaming with people. You can't learn to collaborate and team in certain, non-traditional programs. That's a big part of the soft skills we're trying to learn. How you work with others, how you communicate with others, and in many ways, trying to identify your challenges or your weaknesses that you can work on during your MBA to make you a better, well-rounded leader and an MBA candidate, going into the workforce later.
Right. Douglas, you mentioned the interaction with alumni, and Latanya, presumably, not just being part of this fantastic network and their loyalty, their support, no doubt very proactive with the school. I mean, how does that alumni support work in giving guidance about the consulting industry, financial services, hey, our company's hiring, or simply, the mentoring that they've been through this whole experience before and can provide great insight and advice?
Thank you. And I think, strategically, there is definitely a space and a place for our alums to share their expertise. And as I mentioned before, being a part of that onboarding experience and the orientation experience where the alum are brought in based on their functional areas that they represent, and really sharing with students, exploring career paths, because, you can say consulting, but what does that really mean? So we do that. And our alums are great partners in helping us to onboard each new cohort. But one of the other things that I've just come to love about the alumni network here is just doing some other things. For example, as Doug mentioned, we were at the National Black MBA Conference in Atlanta last week. And so we had our Simon alum in Atlanta. We did a reception the Wednesday night before the conference. And it was such a great turnout from our alums. And their goal was to come meet the students that were participating in the conference, give them advice, offer to help them with their pitch, because as you might imagine, the students have a little bit of nervous energy going into a venue that has over 200 employers there. And so it was just great to see the alums come out after being, at work all day, dealing with Atlanta traffic, and just spending the evening helping us to welcome the students to Atlanta and really positioning themselves for success the next couple of days. And so we've been fortunate to have a very active Symonds Alumni Council and Advisory Board that really helped to steward a lot of the things that we're doing in the Career Center, but also just fostering some alum to alum engagement as well, because we want to make sure that alumni feel that they're tethered to the school. And so we do quite a bit of work with our colleagues in advancement, the Advancement and Alumni Engagement Office, but we tend to see a lot of these connections being made at some of the career events, and the students absolutely appreciate and love the opportunity to learn from folks who've been where they are and have a lot of advice that they can share, a lot of do's and don'ts. Make sure you do this, don't do this. And I think that when the students hear it from them, it's golden, versus when they hear it from us in the Career Center, it's like hearing from your parents. So it's not until you hear it from a peer that it sticks. So, so I appreciate the partnership that we have with our alumni network.
Right. Why is that? No matter how hard that we try, it's always better when it comes from peers. So, I mean, Gillian, for the graduates of UC Irvine, Latanya was describing just that ongoing relationship tethered with the school. They've, during 2 years, been able to test their ideas, come to you for feedback, advice, and guidance. Does that extend beyond the 2 years, and 3 years later, 5 years later, they'll reach back to you and your colleagues for the next steps of their career?
Absolutely. I think the trusting relationship we build goes to a long term. And in our Career Center, we also have a unique setup that one of my colleagues, who's the director of alumni employee relations, actually sits in our office, and she collaborates very closely and works with the entire team. So just for the setup, we know how much we care about our alumni community. So of course, the advisors get requests from our alum, especially during the COVID years. Some of them had job changes. I actually had a superstar alum who graduated 2 years ago, P&G brand management intern, really rock star, started his own business, but again, due to the pandemic, he had to repivot it and become a seeker. So all those relationships, the tools that we taught them, we have to remind them or give them a refresher, but also take things into reality, how to apply that to post MBA. And on the other hand, because of all these givings and the unconditional support, we are always the first ones that the alumni think of when they have job opportunities and beyond that. So our alum sometimes write us back, in addition to bringing job opportunities, they offer to be a panelist, or they wanted to become a mentor. We also have a solid mentorship program for the first year students. So there are a lot of ways for them to give back, and it's a way for alum to understand beyond the monetary contribution they can make, they can really become a mentor for the students.
Yeah, and in terms of your dialogue with them, Mary, there's an understandable focus on the first job out of the MBA program. With the time and the investment that they've just made. But I'm sure at the same time, you're also getting them to think about that first position as a stepping stone for the second position, 4 years out, 8 years, 12 years later. So how do you ensure that they do have a focus on, that first position, but they're also thinking longer term and the sort of skills and advancement that they're making that's going to serve them so well?
Absolutely. I think the word that comes to mind is balance. So thinking about the balancing of that short-term goal versus the long-term career. And I think thinking about it, the balance of both skill building, so some of those functional skills that Doug had mentioned, but also developing the muscles for how to build skills into the future. So a lot of what we focus on is not just, okay, can you check this box, that box for the job description, but are you building these skills within your strategy courses, problem solving courses, analytics courses, as well as your career development? Are you building the muscles to then develop these skills 5 years from now? I don't think any of us saw the pandemic coming, but it brought on digital transformation opportunities. So I think it's a key element of balancing the planning of your next step with the 10 next steps, but a key element that we always like to instill in our students is to make sure that you're preparing to be able to continuously learn and flex those muscles, and being a great part of the alumni network as well, and maintaining those relationships is a key element to that. But I think it's all about balance, as well as learning how to build those muscles so that you can continuously grow and learn in the future.
Right. So many of our viewers, Doug, coming from all over the world, and we'll look at opportunities, staying beyond the MBA, H-1B visas, and those next steps. But of course, with so many nationalities, and Darla Moore, has long been recognized as one of the most internationally minded of the top US business schools. What are you seeing in terms of looking to stay after the MBA, but at the same time, then the credentials and to be able to be very mobile, and perhaps, whether it's return to their home country 3-4 years later, or to another part of the world with the global multinational that they're working with. Is this a very mobile generation in terms of the careers that they're pursuing?
Absolutely. And as you referenced, we've been the #1 ranked international MBA program for nearly 30 years. And we have a lot of internationals coming this way. They'll want to try and come to the US. We've got a lot of US or internationals who want to go elsewhere in part of the world. And candidly, the world has just become a much, much smaller place. And I think that a lot of students do pursue us in many ways to try and get a global role, certainly whether it be a role that starts in US that's going to take them somewhere internationally in the second or third iteration, or vice versa, come here for skills that you're going to get at a strong US institution. As you know, our MBA, our international MBA program involves a 3-month international immersion and a language requirement, which sets you up for a very strong global capacity on that first, second, or third iteration. So yeah, the opportunities are abound. We're in a obviously weird kind of international global recession across the world these days, and we're cherry picking where and how we think certain employers would work with some of our students. It's a little bit of a tighter, just for an interim basis. Tech has been certainly a large recruiting place for a lot of our international students. That's continuing to grow, and they've not shown any sign of abating in that front. I mean, they may be having slowdowns, business-wise, but they're still actively hiring our international students, particularly because of the data analytic capabilities they're all bringing to the table.
Right. So there is likely to come back and saying, I've got a job offer that's within 20 miles of the school, but they could equally be interviewing in Dubai or in Mexico. I mean, all over the world. Those barriers are broken.
And I'll add to that and say that given some of the stringence, the challenges that any school is having with international students in certain U.S. organizations, we may even recommend they go to Canada or another international place and then work your way back in, because there's you can go in through a window, not just the door, in many ways.
Yeah. Latanya, with over 20 years of experience, perhaps that class of 2002 when the dot-com bubble had burst. And then there's the class of 2010 and 11, emerging with the financial crisis. But as you reflect on, these generations of graduates and whatever the geopolitical, global, economic circumstances, do you believe fundamentally that you're better off facing that job market with an MBA from a top school than without one?
I would say yes, but I would also say it depends on the candidate. And the reason I'm saying that is because I very much have, a lot of experience at top MBA programs, but also at other programs. And one of the things that I appreciate about our admissions team is really helping candidates finding the right fit. So we don't want to admit someone into Simon that is not going to be successful. And so depending on the candidate, where they are in their career, what they're wanting to get out of this journey, maybe Simon is a great place for them. Maybe another school is. Regardless of where the candidate goes, I think that you make the experience what you want it to be. And also you have to take advantage of the resources. And so during orientation, when I talk to our students, I tell them, of course, as you've gone through recruiting and you've looked at other schools and the schools that my colleagues on the panel here represent, you're going to see a lot of similarities in terms of our curriculums. And also a lot of our resources are the same. What's different is the amount of energy, the amount of attention that the students are putting into the process. And we're pushing them to take advantage of all of the above, because there is something to be said about a brand, a top brand. It's, we all play really nice in the sandbox as colleagues, but when the students are out there and they're competing, they are competing against different brands. And so that helps, but that opens the door where you go to school, who the alums are at your school. Those are door openers, and those are sometimes just easy for you to get the FaceTime. But what are you going to do with that moment in that interview? How are you going to close the deal? And so I think that for any candidate, regardless of what school they choose, they have a lot of power to make their outcome be what they want it to be by the amount of energy, attention, diligence that they're putting into the process. If you're at a top school, is it easier? Absolutely. It's easier for us when we are trying to promote our students to companies. If we work at, top schools, top ranked schools. But at the end of the day, again, it's the student, it's what they're putting into this journey and this process. And it's also just making sure that what they are attempting to do, there's some sense behind it. There's some common sense behind it. I came from here and now I want to go here. And I have a great story. I can give you a compelling reason why this would work for me. So I don't mean to not directly answer your question, Matt, because I do believe that it is easier in some regards for candidates that go to top ranked schools like Simon and my colleagues' schools. But I also think that the MBA is going to benefit any candidate, regardless of the school, if they use the resources at their school and they have a good sense of self and really can answer that question, why this MBA and why now? And what are you able to do? What kind of impact can you make in our organization? How can you affect our bottom line with this new skill set that you've acquired?
Well, we've always felt that the community of poets and quants, very motivated and individuals who, I think, with the sort of thoughtful and nuanced response that you've given, really helps them. As you say, it's not one size that fits all. You also bring up the idea of an institutional brand. Chilene, when you have recruiters that have, hired UC Irvine graduates in the past and they come back, do they sort of say, we see this characteristic in your graduates and it's something that we really appreciate, something that they identify with the school?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first of all, since 2017, Maraja School changed the curriculum to really add digital leadership into the curriculum. So I know our students have very solid analytical skills on the technical side. On the other hand, we also hear a lot of the buzzwords from, employers our students work with. They are humble leaders. So that's one of the keywords I heard all the time. They are highly collaborative, and being in a very competitive Southern California market, we're a smaller program compared to a few other peer programs like UCLA and USC. They are bigger schools. So to some extent, our students sometimes have the underdog feeling, to be completely honest. But on the other hand, we also provide them with this boutique services to really prep the students well. So they're really able to rise up to the challenges in this fierce competition. And very often we see our students knocking students from other schools through the summer internship, become one of very few who got a return offer. And that moment really just showcase the Anteater pride. We cheer for those moments. So I think it's also the can-do attitude that really allow our students to shine.
Right. As we sort of move forward, Mary, through the uncertainties and the opportunities that lie ahead, business schools are offering a growing range of specialized masters. Do you think that will impact the MBA market, or given its more general focus and then electives that really enable you to sort of dive deeper into certain areas, Is that a formula that will continue to resonate with recruiters and, of course, the students themselves?
Yes, I think that you bring up a great point around those specialized programs offering such a great value proposition. I know that within Mendoza, we have a variety of different specialized masters across masters of science and management and finance, business analytics, et cetera. But I still do believe there is such a strength within this core MBA, and it meets different needs for different people. I believe that as we look at the MBA, there will definitely be changes over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how the curriculum is delivered, some of these more hybrid programs, et cetera. But the core skills around leadership development, creating impact, gaining a variety of those skills to accelerate your careers will still be extremely impactful as a value proposition, while also coexisting for the value proposition for those that might just need to accelerate a particular set of skills like a master's of science and finance versus something like an MBA. So I think these both serve a variety of different purposes, but meet the needs of various different students and will still be valuable in the future.
So let's conclude with a final piece of advice. I'm going to turn to you, Doug, for an audience that's thinking about their next steps of their personal and professional development, and the MBA that's on their path. What advice would you have for them on that journey? Perhaps is it more, rather than the specific role, the job title and the company, it's the sort of person that they want to be that is at the heart of all of the work that you do. What advice would you give them?
Research, research, and research. The more you know and understand both yourself and the industry and the job that you want to do, and you do that by reading and talking and engaging with peers, senior people, whoever you think you can get the most knowledge from, to try to understand those really three things. You really want to know, you got to know yourself first, because if you haven't really known yourself, you may make a miss on the industry or even your functional ability. And certain industries do require certain temperaments, certain skills, certain industries to do, certain geographies, right? We've been blessed in the last couple of years down in the South with a growth of employers and students and everything coming down this way. And the role of hybrid has flattened that competitive landscape regarding what is a top school in many ways. There's a target school kind of world is really flattening in many ways. So I think the more that you can come prepared into making a decision about a master's program, specialized or otherwise, or an MBA, and how those differentiate because they do each bring something distinct to the table, you'll be a better candidate for any school, whichever those programs or schools you go. So if I just singularly put it as research, know yourself, know the industry, know a role as best you can by doing online research, but talk to as many people in that networking process. It will bring you primary input.
With that emphasis on research, we hope that's something that CentreCourt can contribute to all of our viewers. So to be able to share with them your insights and thoughtful wisdom drawn on experience, watching this extended family on their personal journeys. Thank you all four of you for sharing that with us, because I think often your admissions colleagues are the ones that are on the road attending the MBA fair as the first point of natural contact. But for potential candidates to actually hear from you and all of the work that you're doing with your colleagues to assist them and open up doors, opportunities, and just that sense of self and the confidence that comes with it. So Latanya, Chilin, Doug, Mary, thank you very much for joining us today at CentreCourt and for everything that you've shared.